Ellen is exactly the kind of voter the Republican Party is worried about.
I have no intentions of voting for anybody unless they have acknowledged, publicly endorsed, or said they're going to vote for Mr. Trump.
Trump supporters like her are putting down-ballot Republicans across the country in a difficult position.
Helping me re-elect Republicans.
As Trump drops behind Clinton in the polls, the fear is that he will take House races, like the Florida 13th where Ellen lives, down with him.
If you're not going to vote for your nominee, I'm not going to vote for you. David Jolly, I'm not voting for him.
Hey, sir.
Jolly, Ellen's current congressman, has never supported Trump.
Donald Trump is toxic for down-ballot Republicans. Toxic. He single-handedly might be responsible for Republicans losing control of the House of Representatives.
Jolly denounced his opponent, Democrat Charlie Crist, for an ad photoshopping Jolly's face to make it look like he has met with Trump, and fired back with his own claims.
It is the only race in the country where the Democrat is tied politically and personally to Donald Trump.
How are you? Nice to see you.
A charge Crist brushes off, saying Trump's not a factor in this race.
I've had a lot of people fundraise for me. He was a supporter, and that's it. How are you?
Formerly a Republican governor, Crist now condemns Trump.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Democratic candidates are pushing voters here in Florida and across the country to take a look at their Republican opponents and their stance on Donald Trump.
Congressman Micah and Donald Trump.
In Florida's 7th congressional district, Democrat Stephanie Murphy's ads link the voting record of her opponent, Congressman John Micah, with Trump's controversial statements.
I'm running. My name is Stephanie Murphy.
Murphy betting a link to Trump won't sit well with voters in a district evenly divided among Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
If you stick with your party nominee, either you're putting your politics and your party above the people, or these and your principles, or these are your principles.
But those attacks are unwarranted, says Micah supporter Nick Primrose.
He said that he will support the nominee of his party, but he's also condemned him for some of his language and some of his policies.
Transportation and infrastructure are important.
Micah is making his case on local issues, not the national discussion about Trump.
He is a man who gets stuff done for Central Florida, and they just kind of forget that he's associated with, the Republican Party.
2 races, 2 ways of dealing with Donald Trump. And the strategy that wins on Election Day will decide the next Congress and the future of the Republican Party. Katherine Gypson in Central Florida, VOA News. Sunday dinner in the country, a weekly tradition for 3 generations of Bowmans. A time to talk about family.
He had 2 brothers already over there in the services.
The value of hard work in the now vanishing tobacco fields.
And when we went back and I saw them doing it, it was no pride in it.
And all the things that hard work was meant for.
People wanted to dream and have things, like a home and a white picket fence. Now, they want it given to them. A lot of people want to give it to them because the government's got so into it.
Carolyn Bowman thinks Donald Trump can change that. And in a family full of Trump supporters, she may be the most passionate. By giving a friend's calf a familiar name. Making sure signs line all the roads to Farmville, home to the vice presidential debate.
You always have to watch where you put them, so it'll be harder for them to come and get them off the hillside.
And all over the business she built from scratch 17 years ago.
I work anybody that's willing to work, just like Donald Trump. It's hard to find help because they get paid more to sit on the couch. He's going to put people back to work.
Farmville is just an hour from Tim Kaine's home city of Richmond, a diverse, Democratic-leaning city that previously elected him as mayor. Voters here in Farmville and other rural areas of Virginia vote based on jobs. So even though Kaine is their senator and a longtime local, they're still taking a look at Trump. Here at Carolyn's twice-annual fair, many local residents sell secondhand goods to boost their income or just to make a living.
I literally work 7 days a week.
But Christian doesn't expect much from either side of the ticket.
Everything's messed up, and whoever does get elected has got a hard road ahead of them. And if they fail, they go get the blame for everything that's going on now. I don't envy either one of them.
As for the Trump and Confederate flags, he says they're just a way to bring in business. As for the election,
it's a big question mark. Yeah, for the little guy like me.
but Carolyn is sure this election will be a chance to vote on the values that have always guided her.
But I know that I've worked hard all my life, and I'm tired of this country being given away.
Katherine Gypson in Farmville, Virginia, VOA News. Congress now leaves for a week-long break with more questions than answers. Democrats looking for leadership, will Republicans wait on a Trump transition? Katherine Gypson on Capitol Hill, VOA News. But the key question here for Donald Trump, can the Muslim American vote make a difference in swing states in November? As she makes her final case to voters here in Pennsylvania, polls show Clinton leads Trump statewide by several points. Katherine Gypson in Philadelphia, VOA News. After 2 unsuccessful runs for Congress, Pence finally became the representative for Indiana on Capitol Hill in 2000. In the wake of mass shootings like San Bernardino and Orlando, gun laws are up for debate across the country. But here in Maine, where hunting and gun clubs like these are a way of life, the background check ballot question is seen by many as a threat.
Presidential election, we are joined by our election experts, my political A-team here in Washington, senior national correspondent Jim Malone, who filed that report, and VOA political reporter Katherine Gypson. As always great to have both of you on, but I want to talk to you, Jim, about the report you just filed here. So all Americans have an equal vote. However, when it comes to states, not all states are created equal.
Look, we have a state-by-state system, Mill, of election. So the popular vote is not what elects our presidents. There are certain electoral values assigned to each state based on population. The winner, who gets 270 or above, will be the next president. The political landscape is such that 2/3 of the states lean one way or the other. That leaves about a dozen in the middle, what we call battleground swing states. Over the last 20 years or so, they tend to be the same states. Katherine was just in Florida, which is one of the key states. So the candidates really focus on this handful of states in the final run-up. These are the states that will determine who the next president
is. And these swing states, Katherine, the polls there have been tightening up a lot, haven't they?
That's right. And if you talk to some of the Trump supporters, like I was down in Florida last week, they're saying that the polls aren't actually even reflecting the amount of support for Donald Trump. They're looking at the number of yard signs. They're looking at the social media chatter. And they're saying Donald Trump has a lot of support in these big key swing states.
And yet Donald Trump is suggesting that these elections may be rigged. How dangerous is that kind of talk in a democracy like the United States?
Well, it's a little alarming right now. I was talking to a Republican analyst this week, someone who goes back to the Reagan years, someone I value as sort of a mainstream Republican. But I think some of them are coming to terms with the possibility of a loss, and I can already sense some anger and discontent. How that plays out after the election, I have no idea. But look, let's get to the election first. There's early voting going on. Clinton has, in an average, about a 5 or 6 point lead in the polls. That's a big lead, by the way, with a week to go in terms of a historical precedent.
Insurmountable for Trump, or what do you think, Katherine?
Well, we're also seeing some of the early voting numbers that are coming in, and we're seeing a lot of women voting. And the speculation is that if more women are voting, they're going to be breaking for Hillary Clinton. That's in her favor.
So, Katherine, getting back to the unfavorability of Donald Trump, how does that affect the down ballot races? Is that going to have an impact on the Senate and the congressional?
That's a key issue this year. And I was down in Florida looking at 2 races in very moderate districts where the candidates have to walk a fine line between their support of Donald Trump and kind of denouncing some of the things that he said. They're having a really hard time. It's a very delicate strategy because there's a whole mix down in Florida of Democrats, Republicans, and independents in that central part of the state. And it really remains to be seen whether that strategy will work or not.
Jim Malone, the pivotal moment for Donald Trump appears to have been the Access Hollywood hot mic event where he actually talked about what he could get away with when it comes to women. How come Hillary Clinton's scandals, the WikiLeaks emails and all that, and the allegations of corruption with with Bill Clinton?
Look, my view is that was a key moment, October 7th, the release of that tape. I think that set maybe a ceiling for Trump. I actually think the key moment has been the debates. I think the debates have been pivotal, and Clinton has only gone up after the debates. I think that was the central switching point in the campaign. They were almost nearly tied September 26th on the eve of that first debate. Now, the WikiLeaks, I think the problem there for the Trump people who want to point to that, it shows more internal dysfunction within the Clinton camp. There's no sort of smoking gun of illegality or something that the normal, regular voter can grasp. It reinforces certain stereotypes of the Clintons that, you know, there's some shady dealings going on. But there's nothing there like that tape. I think people can still hear it in their heads, and I think that's a problem for
Catherine, this has been an awful long election. It's election season, it seems that way. What are you going to be paying attention to on November 8th?
I'll be looking at some of the House races across the country to see whether this push against Donald Trump really goes down ballot, whether some of the voters have been turned off by his rhetoric, and what that means for the next Congress.
What about you, Jim?
I'll be looking at the victory speech by the winner, and perhaps more importantly, the concession speech, if there is one, by the loser.
So
I think moving after the election, national healing will be a priority. Will they be up to it?
Yeah, that's something we'll likely be talking about fairly soon as well. Thank you so much. We'll probably see you in New York at some point. Thank you, Jim and Catherine. That is our show this week. We will have one more before Americans head to the polls, so make sure you join us next week for another edition of The Correspondents. I'm going to try to have both of you folks back on. Meantime, stay up to date with the latest news from around the world at voanews.com. You can also catch this and all our other shows there. Just click on the Watch tab on the upper right corner of our webpage. We are also on Facebook and YouTube at VOA The Correspondents. I'm Mil Arcega, and for now, so long from Washington.